Okay, so now we'll go with the first chapter under this unit, that is the cell, the unit of life. Okay, the cell, the unit of life. Okay, in this we'll discuss about what is a cell. Okay, we'll go with the cell theory. What is mean by cell theory? What are the concepts related to cell theory, and who proposed the cell theory, and okay, fine, okay, given the different statements of cell theory. And next, an overview of cell. Okay, we'll go with the overview of a cell, and we'll go with the prokaryotic cells and the different structures that are associated with the prokaryotic cell. And next we'll go with the eukaryotic cells. Okay, and different structures that are associated with the eukaryotic cells. So that is okay, that is the concepts that we'll study under this unit, under this chapter, cell, the unit of life. So that is, when you look around, you see both living and non-living things. Okay, when you look around, you see both living and non-living things. You must have wondered and asked yourself, what is it that makes an organism living? Okay, that means okay, around us we'll find both living and non-living. So then the question arises, what are the characteristics that makes an object living? Okay, what is it that makes an organism living, or what is it that an inanimate thing does not have, which of a living thing has? Okay, already while we are discussing about a living world, okay, we have described certain concepts. Okay, the concepts related to living. Okay, the concepts related to living. Concepts related to living. Okay, that is they undergo growth, they show reproduction, they show response to the stimulus. Okay, they show metabolism. Okay, and a consciousness. Okay, these are the some of the characteristics that makes an object living. Those organisms which are showing these characters are usually considered as a living. So that is what we can say. So the answer to this is the presence of a okay, basic unit of life, the cell in all living organisms. So okay, all these characteristics are related to the, which is considered as the basic unit of life. Why we are calling okay the cell as the basic unit of life means all the living organisms are made up of a cell. Okay, so that is what we can see here. All organisms are composed of cells, no exception. Those organisms which possess cells, those are only considered as living. Okay, all organisms are composed of cells. Some are composed of a single cell. Okay, some are made up of with a single cell, and some are okay, and those are called unicellular organisms. Okay, those organisms which are composed of a single cell, are made up of with a single cell, those are called as unicellular organisms, while others like us composed of many cells. Okay, and some organisms are made up of many and are considered as multicellular organisms. So unicellular organisms, multicellular organisms. If the organism is made up of with a single cell, okay, they are called unicellular organisms like bacteria, protozoans, and some fungi, some algae. Okay, these are made up of with a single cell. That's why they are called unicellular organisms. Okay, and next, the organisms which are made up of many cells, like some fungi. Okay, next plants, most of the plants, and all the animals, these are all made up of many cells. That's why these are all considered as the multicellular organisms. Okay, that is. And next, to what is a cell? What is a cell? Unicellular organisms are capable of independent existence. That means, okay, when you observe a unicellular organism, okay, here a single cell can survive and live individually. So independent existence. For example, if we take human, is a multicellular organism, we'll know very well. Okay, if we take one cell out of our body, that cell is able to live or able to survive? No, it is unable to live. Okay, after a certain period of time, okay, it will be undergone death, but it cannot continue. But if we take a unicellular organism like bacteria or protozoan, the single cell can survive. They can able to proliferate. That means they can give rise to new cells also. That is so they are able to show independent existence. That means a single cell is able to live or survive. And the second one is performing the essential functions of life. So whatever the functions that are carried out by the multicellular organism, by different cells that are present in that multicellular organism, like digestion, respiration, excretion, transportation, reproduction, all those characters, okay, all those physiological process or all those functions are carried out by a single cell in unicellular organisms. So that is so unicellular organisms are capable of independent existence and performing the essential functions of life and performing the essential functions of life. Okay, that is, and next, anything less than a complete structure of a cell, anything less than a complete structure of a cell does not ensure independent living. So that means why a single cell is capable of showing independent existence are able to perform essential functions means here a single cell will have all the structures, okay, all the structures to keep the cell in a living condition. So if any of these structures are absent in a cell, then the surviving of the cell will be in a problem. So that's why anything less than a complete structure of a cell does not ensure independent living. Anything less than a complete structure of a cell does not ensure independent living. Hence, cell is the, okay, that is, so if any structures less than a cell, okay, it is unable to survive or unable to live. So that's why, hence, cell is the fundamental structural and functional unit of all living organisms. Okay, that's why the cell is considered. That means any structure less than the cell is unable to live or unable to exist independently or unable to perform all the functions. That's why the cell is considered as a fundamental structural and functional unit of all living organisms. Okay, because any, okay, the cell can undergo, okay, can capable of independent existence and perform all the essential functions. Anything less than the cell or any structure less than the cell is unable to undergo independent existence or unable to perform essential functions. That's why the cell is considered as the structural and functional unit of all the living organisms. And next, who first observed the living cell? Anthony von Leeuwenhoek. Okay, okay. The first cell was discovered by, generally in your law, okay, you might have said the first cell was discovered by Robert Hooke. But whatever the cells that were discovered by Robert Hooke was a dead cell. Why? Because he observed the cell in a cork, which is the dead bark of a tree. So in that, he observed the dead cells. He didn't observe any cell structure, something like that. Okay, that's why whatever the cell that was discovered by Robert Hooke is a dead cell. It is not the living cell. So the living cell, the first person who first observed the living cell is Anthony von Leeuwenhoek. Okay, when you observe this Anthony von Leeuwenhoek, okay, by profession he was a lens grinder. That means he used to make spectacles. Okay, used to make spectacles lens. Okay, so with the help, okay, as he was a he was a lens grinder. That means he used to make a lens for spectacles. So with the knowledge he is having, he has developed a large number of some 1,000 different types of microscopes, which are made up of with a single lens. And these microscopes are so powerful, they are having the magnification that is similar to that of that compound microscope that we are now using. That much, okay, high magnifying lens, single lens he has developed. With the help of the magnifying lens or microscope that he discovered, he observed this okay, that is he observed the blood cells, he observed the bacteria, he observed the protozoans, okay, water, okay, the protozoans that are present in the water, and the bacteria that is present in the teeth scrapings. And he okay, teeth scraping, that means he scraped the teeth, and he observed under the microscope the different bacteria, and he observed the blood cells. Like this, he observed different types of living cells. So he was the first person who observed the living cell. And later, okay, Robert Brown later discovered the nucleus. So that means after, okay, that is, we all know very well, the first cell was discovered by Robert Hooke, which is a dead cell that doesn't have nucleus. Okay, it's almost, it took around 100 years, 100 to 150 years to discover the nucleus after the discovery of the first cell. Okay, that is by Robert Brown. Robert Brown discovered the nucleus. Okay, the invention of the microscope and its improvement leading to the electron microscope revealed all the structural details of the cell. So that means okay, the person who invented the microscope means Anthony von Leeuwenhoek. Anthony von Leeuwenhoek discovered the discovered the microscope, and with the microscope he discovered, okay, microscope, okay, he observed the living cells. And later Robert Brown has discovered the nucleus. So later on, a lot of other magnifying slowly, okay, simple microscope, okay, hand lens, okay, simple microscope, light microscope, and finally we have arrived at electron microscope. By using electron microscope, even we can observe the different structures at a molecular level. So that is the importance of this electron microscope. So the invention of microscope followed by the improvement in the microscope, and finally we arrived at electron microscope. Okay, with the discovery of this, all these microscopes, we are able to study all the structural components of the cell, the different structural components of the cell. Okay, and next, okay, after the discovery of this living cell and followed by the microscope, okay, followed by the nucleus, okay, the scientist has proposed the cell theory. Okay, in the year 1838, okay, Matthias Sheldon, a German botanist, okay, Matthias Sheldon, a German botanist, examined a large number of plants and observed all parts, okay, and observed that all plants are composed of different kinds of cells which form the tissues of the plant. So in the year 1835, okay, a German botanist, that is Sheldon, that is Matthias Sheldon, okay, examined a large number of plants, okay, and observed the different, okay, the in plants we'll find different types of cells, and okay, and these cells are together, they are forming the tissues of the plant. At the same time, okay, that means Matthias Sheldon in the year 1838 observed different plants, their cells, and they find that different types of tissues are present in the plant. At the same time, that means during the same period, okay, that is during the same period like 1838 and 1839, in the same period, at about the same time, another scientist, that is Theodore Swan, that is in the year 1839, a British zoologist, studied different types of animal cells and reported that cells had a thin outer layer which is today known as the plasma membrane. Okay, that is okay, that means at the same time around 1838 and 1839, okay, during that, a scientist called Theodore Swan in the year 1839, okay, he was a British zoologist, German botanist, British zoologist, okay, German botanist, that is Matthias Sheldon, and a British zoologist, that is Theodore Swan. Okay, Sheldon worked on plant cells and Swan worked on animal cells. Okay, and when you observe the animal cells, the outer layer of the animal cells is thin, and this thin outer layer we call it as a plasma membrane now. Okay, he has not given the name to that membrane, but he said that the animal cells are covered by a thin layer, and later it was named as a plasma membrane. Okay, and next, he also, that means both of them have worked on the cells of plants and animals separately. Okay, he also concluded, based on his studies on plant tissues, he also concluded based on his studies on plant tissues that the presence of cell wall is a unique character of plant cells. So, okay, by comparing the cells of plants and animals, what they came to understand means this, okay, the Sheldon has said that, okay, the plant cells are covered by a tough covering called as a cell wall, which is the unique feature of plant cells, which is not, that means a unique feature in plant cells means, okay, this is the characteristic feature which is observed only in plant cells but not in animal cells. Animal cells do not have cell wall, only plant cells are having a cell wall. Okay, on the basis of this, Swan proposed the hypothesis that the bodies of animals and plants are composed of cells and products of cells. Okay, so with the observation of plant cells by Sheldon and animal cells by Schwann, they finally came to know that what is the major difference between plants and animal cell means plant cells are having cell wall, whereas the animal cells do not have cell wall. Okay, so the presence of cell wall is the unique characteristic feature of plant cells, they said. And they also said that, okay, when you observe the plants, okay, plant or animal, both are made up of cells, and the products of cells, that means the different components that are present in the cell are almost similar in both plants and animals also. So by combining all these statements, finally, the Sheldon and Swan together formulated the cell theory. So that means both are different scientists, okay, from different countries, and they have studied on different organisms, and finally they brought together whatever they have found, okay, and finally they formulated the cell theory. These two scientists, that is Matthias Sheldon and Theodore Swan, both have formulated the cell. This theory, however, did not explain, okay, that means they explained the concept of cells. There is a plant cells are having cell wall, animal cells do not have cell wall, and they are made up of, okay, plant and animals are made up of cells and their products. That concept only given, but they didn't explain how the new cells were formed. Okay, that means almost the plant cells and animal cells are same except the presence of cell wall. Both are having the same cell structures, almost the same. That's what Sheldon and Swan has done, but they didn't explain how the new cells are formed. Okay, but later another scientist called Rudolf Virchow, another scientist called Rudolf Virchow, in the year first explained that cells divided and new cells are formed from pre-existing cells. Okay, that means Rudolf Virchow, okay, in the year 1855, that means after a period of almost 15 to 20 years later on, the cell theory was proposed by this Sheldon and Swan. This statement also added to the cell theory. What is that statement means? Okay, which was a statement that was proposed by Rudolf Virchow. What is that means? The new cells are formed from the pre-existing cells. Okay, that means the existing cells will divide and they give rise to new cells. So these new cells are formed from pre-existing cells. So that is what we can see. Omnis cellula e cellula. Okay. And next, he modified the hypothesis of Sheldon and Swan to give the cell theory a final shape. So that means whatever the statement that was given by Rudolf Virchow, that is the new cells are formed from pre-existing cells, is also added to the postulates of cell theory, and the final shape to the cell theory was given. So that is so he modified the hypothesis of Sheldon and Swan to give the cell theory a final shape. So cell theory, okay, so what are the major statements of this cell theory means? Cell theory as understood today is all living organisms are composed of cells and products of cells. Okay, when you observe here, all living organisms are composed of cells and products of cells. And next, all cells arise from pre-existing cells. All cells arise from a pre-existing cells. Okay, all cells arise from a pre-existing cells. Okay, now, so that is, these are the two major statements of the cell theory. Of that, the first statement is given by Sheldon and Swan, and the second statement is given by Rudolf Virchow. Understood? Anybody is having any doubt up to now? Anybody is having any doubt, ma?
No, sir.
Okay. And next, an overview of cell. Okay, you have earlier observed cells onion peel and are a human cheek cells under the microscope. Okay, in your lower class you might have done this activity. Okay, okay, take a, okay, when you, okay, regularly you can observe in the onion, no? Onion, you, okay, go to the kitchen in your home, take one onion, and next make, okay, okay, we'll find the layers. The onion is present in the layers, in the form of layers. Carefully remove those layers. So, okay, on the surface of the layers, on every layer, we'll find one more very thin layer. Carefully remove that thin layer. Okay, place it on the clean slide, clean dry slide, stain it properly, and observe under the microscope. Okay, that is okay. We can see a typical plant cell. You can observe a typical plant cell when you observe this onion peel under the microscope. In the map, if you want to observe a animal cell, take one toothpick, place it in your mouth, and gently rub on the inner side face of the cheek. Okay, so gently, not very hardly, gently rub on the inner surface of the cheek. Okay, we can get a thin layer of the skin. Okay, keep that a thin layer of the skin widespread gently on the mic, on the glass slide, stain it properly, and observe under the microscope. You can observe a typical animal cell. Okay, we can observe a typical animal cell. So that is how we can able to observe the a typical plant cell and a typical animal cell. So make use of onion peel for a typical plant cell, and we can use the human cheek cells for a typical animal cells. Okay, that is. So let us recollect their structure. Okay, the onion cell, which is a typical plant cell, has a distinct cell wall. Already we said, okay, very clearly, the plant cells are having a cell wall. The plants, okay. So the onion cell, which is a typical plant cell, has a distinct cell wall and its outer boundary. As its outer boundary, and just within it is the cell membrane. So we'll find what is the outer boundary of a plant cell means usually we'll cell wall, and inner to the cell wall we'll find the cell membrane or plasma membrane. Okay, but when it comes to animal cells. The cells of the human cheek have an outer membrane as the delimiting structure of the cell. So the outermost layer of the animal cell is the cell membrane or plasma membrane only, because in animals we don't find cell walls. So the cell membrane is the delimiting membrane or delimiting structure of the animal cells. But in case of plant cells, what is the delimiting structure? Means that is a cell wall. Inner to the cell wall, we'll find the plasma membrane. Okay, that is. And next, inside each cell is a dense membrane bound structure called nucleus. Okay, that means inside the plant cell or animal cell, okay, we'll find a dense membrane bound structure. Okay, that means the fluid that is present inside this structure will be dense, and it is surrounded by a membrane, and this dense membrane bound structure we are calling it as a nucleus. It is present in both plant cell as well as in animal cell. Okay, that is. And next, this nucleus, what this nucleus consists of? This nucleus contains chromosomes, which in turn contain the genetic material, that is the DNA. So when you observe this nucleus, inside the nucleus what are present means chromosomes. Okay, inside the nucleus what is present means chromosomes, which in turn contain the genetic material. Which in turn contain the genetic material. What is the genetic material means? In most of the organisms, the genetic material is DNA. So in plants and animals also we'll find DNA as the genetic material. Okay, that is. And next, cells that have membrane bound nuclei are called eukaryotic. Cells that have membrane bound nuclei are called eukaryotic, whereas the cells that lack a membrane bound nucleus are prokaryotic. Okay, what is the nucleus means? Nucleus is the region where the chromosome and the genetic material is present. Okay, if chromosome which is consisting of the genetic material, that is DNA, if it is surrounded by the membrane, we are calling it as a nucleus. And if nucleus is present, then such cells are described as eukaryotic cells. Then such cells are called as a eukaryotic cells. Okay, whereas the cells which lack membrane bound genetic material, okay, then such cells we are calling it as a prokaryotic cells. Okay, that is, cells that have membrane bound nuclei are called eukaryotic, whereas the cells that lack a membrane bound nucleus are prokaryotic. So in both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, a fluid matrix called cytoplasm occupies the volume of the cell. So that means whether it is a prokaryotic cell or a eukaryotic cell, okay, the cell consists of a semi-fluid matrix, a semi-fluid matrix, and this semi-fluid matrix we call it as cytoplasm, which occupies the okay major volume of the cell, major volume of the cell. Okay, so okay, okay, matrix of the cell, we are calling it as a cytoplasm. Okay, the cytoplasm is the main arena of cellular activities in both the plant and animal cells. So okay, a large number of physiological or physico-chemical reactions and different functions, okay, that are carried out by the cell, all they are taking place in this cytoplasm. Okay, that is cytoplasm is the main arena. That is the main arena means main area or place of cellular activities in both plant and animal cells, whether it is a plant cell or animal cell. In both these site, okay, in the cytoplasm only, all these physicochemical activities will occur. And next, various chemical reactions occur in it to keep the cell in the living state. So already we said, if a cell has to be in living condition, it has to undergo continuous metabolism. Okay, it has to undergo continuous metabolism. So to undergo this metabolism, they have to undergo certain chemical reactions, and all these chemical reactions will occur in the cytoplasm. Okay, then only the cell will be in a living state. The cell will be in a living state. So all the different biochemical reactions are taking place in the cytoplasm to keep the cytoplasm in living condition. Okay, that is. And next, besides the nucleus, the eukaryotic cells have other membrane bound distinct structures called organelles. Okay, that is besides the nucleus. Okay, the eukaryotic cells, okay, remember this, the eukaryotic cells have other membrane bound distinct structures called organelles. Okay, like the endoplasmic reticulum, the Golgi complex, lysosomes, mitochondria, microbodies, and vacuoles. Okay, these are all membrane bound organelles. So where they are present means they are present in the cytoplasm. Okay, besides the nucleus, why we are saying means because nucleus is also a cell organelle which is surrounded by a membrane. So along with the nucleus, in the eukaryotic cells, we'll find some other membrane bound structures. Okay, like endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, lysosomes, mitochondria, microbodies, and vacuoles. All these are surrounded by a membrane, and these are called organelles. Okay, and next, these membrane bound organelles are absent in prokaryotes. Okay, that's what we can see here. The prokaryotic cells lack such membrane bound organelles. Okay, such membrane bound organelles are absent in prokaryotes, and this membrane bound organelles are present in eukaryotes, like endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, microbodies, lysosomes, mitochondria, vacuoles. And next, along with this, there are some non-membrane bound organelles. That means they are not surrounded by membrane. Okay, they are not surrounded by membrane. That is, they are non-membrane bound organelles. That is, ribosomes are non-membrane bound organelles found in all cells. That is both eukaryotic as well as prokaryotic. So this non-membrane bound organelles are present in both prokaryotic as well as eukaryotic cells. What are those non-membrane bound organelles means? That is a ribosome. Okay, ribosomes are non-membrane bound cell organelles, okay, that are present in both prokaryotic as well as eukaryotic cells. Okay, there is. And next, within the cell, ribosomes are found not only in the cytoplasm, but also within the two organelles, that is the chloroplast and mitochondria, and on endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, when you observe the ribosomes, which are the non-membrane bound cell organelles. Okay, this non-membrane bound cell, okay, non-membrane bound cell organelles. Okay, they are not only present in the cytoplasm. Okay, they are also present inside the two membrane bound cell organelles, that is mitochondria and chloroplast. Okay, and they are also present on the surface of a rough endoplasmic reticulum, that is endoplasmic reticulum, on which this okay, ribosomes are present. Such endoplasmic reticulum, we are calling it as a rough endoplasmic reticulum, or simply we say RER, that is a rough endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, that is so this, okay, ribosomes are non-membrane bound cell organelles which are not only present in eukaryotes but they are also present in prokaryotes. But when it comes to eukaryotes, in eukaryote, in eukaryotic cells, the ribosomes are not only present in the cytoplasm, they are also present inside the cell organelles, two cell organelles, that is chloroplast and mitochondria. Okay, and they are also present on the surface of the, not inside, on the outer surface of the, okay, endoplasmic reticulum. And such endoplasmic reticulum, we are calling it as a rough endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, when you observe here, okay, mitochondria are present in both plant and animal cells, but chloroplasts are present only in plants or plant cells. Okay, that is. And next, when you observe here, animal cells contain another non-membrane bound organelle called centrosome, which helps in cell division. Okay, when you observe the animal cells contain another non-membrane bound organelle called centrosome. Okay, which helps in a cell division. Okay, which is present only in animal cells but usually absent in a plant cells. Okay, that's what he is saying. Okay, that is the meaning of this sentence. Animal cells contain another non-membrane bound organelle called centrosome, which helps in cell division. Okay, absent in plant cells. Okay, that is. And next, when you observe the cells differ greatly in size, shape, and activities. Okay, when you observe here, the cells are of a different size, shape, and activities. Okay, it is a, okay, this is size. Okay, the difference in the size, shape, and activity is mainly based upon the function that is carried out by the cell. Okay, there is a difference in, okay, the difference in the size, shape is mainly based upon the function that is carried out by the cell. Based on that, the size and shape will be varying. Okay, for example, you can see, okay, the smallest cells, the smallest living cell is the mycoplasmas. Okay, for example, mycoplasma, the smallest cells are only 0.3 micrometers in length, while bacteria could be 3 to 5 micrometers. Okay, the smallest cell, which is the smallest cell? Mycoplasma. Okay, mycoplasmas are considered the smallest living cells. And what is their size? It is around 0.3 micrometers. And next, the size of the bacteria ranges from 3 to 5 micrometers. And next, the largest isolated single cell is the egg of an ostrich. Okay, when you observe the largest single cell, largest, not longest, largest. The largest isolated single cell is the egg of an ostrich. Okay, there is a, and next, among multicellular organisms, human red blood cells are about 7.0 micrometers in diameter, which are considered the smallest cells in a human. They are about 7 micrometers in diameter, 7.0 micrometers in diameter. And next, coming to the longest cells, the nerve cells are some of the longest cells. Okay, longest cells might, okay, usually are nerve cells. Okay, so the smallest cell, the smallest living cell is a mycoplasma, which is around 0.3 micrometers. And next, the size of the bacteria ranges from 3 to 5 micrometers. And next, the largest cell being the ostrich egg, the largest isolated single cell. Isolated single cell is the ostrich. And next, among multicellular organisms like human, okay, which is the smallest cell may be, it may be the RBC, and it is around 7 micrometers. And in multicellular organisms, which are the longest cells means usually it is the nerve cells. Nerve cells are considered as the longest cells. And next, the cells also vary greatly in their shape. Okay, not only in their size, okay, they are also showing a different shapes. Okay, they may be disc-like, polygonal, columnar, cuboidal, thread-like, or even irregular in shape. Okay, they are of different shapes. Either they are disc shaped, that is flattened, polygonal, they are having different faces, columnar like a pillar, tall pillar like, cuboidal like cube shaped, thread like, okay, thread like, that is thin and long, or even irregular in shape, okay, that is the shape of the cell may vary with the function they perform. Okay, the shape of the cell may vary with the function they perform. Okay, that is, okay, these are the, okay, some differences between prokaryotic and eukaryotic, animal cell and plant cells, and different size and shapes of the cells that are present in living organisms. Anybody is having any doubt?
No, sir.